Hello and welcome to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast number 84. In this week's show we'll be reviewing In the Forest of the Night, as well as finding out what you thought, as Peter Capaldi's first season heads toward its conclusion. And in the first of a new mini-series we'll start our look at three more characters from the black and white era of Doctor Who, with a look at second Doctor companion Ben, as played by Michael Craze. Michael Craze was born on the 29th of November 1942 and was a British actor noted for the role of Ben Jackson, companion to the Doctor. He played the part from 1966 to 1967 alongside both William Hartnell and Patrick Troughton. Craze was born in Cornwall and got into acting by chance, as at the age of 12 he discovered through Boy Scout gang shows that he had the perfect boy soprano voice. That led him to win parts in The King and I and Plain and Fancy, both at Drury Lane, and Damn Yankees at the Coliseum. Once he'd left school he went into repertory and got into TV through his agent. His first television show was called The Family Solicitor for Granada, which was followed among others by a part in ABC TV's 1960s Target Luna. At the age of 20, Craze wrote, directed and acted in a film called The Golden Head, for which he won an award at the Commonwealth Film Festival in Cardiff. Following Doctor Who, Craze worked on several ITV productions, including one episode, The Last Visitor, of Hammer's Films' first TV series, Journey to the Unknown, in 1968. Other television roles include parts in Dixon of Dock Green and Z-Cars. In the 1970s, Craze appeared in two cult Norman J. Warren horror films, Satan's Slave in 1976 and Terror in 1978. And before both of those he appeared in the horror fantasy romance film Neither the Sea Nor the Sand in 1972. In the 80s, Craze acted only occasionally, while he was also managing a pub. Sadly, Michael Craze died of a heart attack on the 8th of December 1998. He'd fallen down some steps the previous day while picking up his neighbour's paper for her, and owing to a heart condition was unable to be operated on. Craze was cremated, and then some of his ashes were scattered over the River Thames. He was married to Edwina Craze, a television producer and previously a floor manager whom he met while working on Doctor Who. Michael Craze's brother is actor Peter Craze, who had also appeared in Doctor Who. Benjamin Ben Jackson was a seaman in the Royal Navy from 1966. He was a companion of the first and second Doctors, and a regular in Doctor Who from 1966 to 1967. Ben appears in 9 stories totalling 36 episodes. Sadly, The War Machines is the only serial in which Ben appears which is complete in the BBC archive. In fact, Ben first appears in the first Doctor serial, The War Machines, when he meets Polly and Dodo in a London nightclub called the Inferno. As an able seaman serving in the Royal Navy aboard HMS Teaser, Ben is feeling depressed and angry because he has a 6-month shore posting while his ship is deployed to the West Indies, but Polly and Dodo try to cheer him up. When Polly is accosted by another man in the Inferno, Ben comes to her rescue. Eventually, Ben and Polly help the Doctor in his fight against the rogue artificial intelligence known as Wotan. Afterwards, Ben and Polly are the bearers of the news of Dodo's decision to stay in 1966 to the Doctor, and accidentally get carried away in the TARDIS when they try and return Dodo's TARDIS key. Ben is a salt-of-the-earth kind of guy, dependable, faithful, but prone to be suspicious when kept in the dark or not understanding what was going on. He's very attached to Polly, considering her posh and giving her the nickname of Duchess, and appointing himself as both her protector and that of the Doctor. He's present with Polly when the First Doctor regenerates, and continues to travel with the Second Doctor. On his travels with Polly and the Second Doctor, he encounters Daleks, Cybermen, Macra, and mad scientists, as well as meeting new companion Jamie McCrimmon. Eventually the TARDIS does find its way back to 1966 London, in the story The Faceless Ones, and on the very day that Ben and Polly had left, although about a year has passed for them. They decide to remain behind and live their lives without disruption, as the Doctor and Jamie travel on. What happens to Ben after his return to Earth isn't certain. The Doctor seems to think that Ben will become an admiral and that Polly will look after him, but it's unclear if that's a prediction or simply wishing them well. Ben is mentioned by Sarah Jane Smith in The Death of the Doctor as working with Polly in India and running an orphanage. In the spin-off short story Mondas Passing by Paul Grice, which takes place in 1986, it's revealed that Ben and Polly have gone their separate ways and married other people. However, Ben meets a divorced Polly again with the help of the Second Doctor in 1999, in the short story That Time I Nearly Destroyed the World Whilst Looking for a Dress by Joseph Lister, where the pair do finally admit their love for one another.
I think it's lovely.
You have reached your destination.
No, we haven't. We're supposed to be in the middle of London.
You have reached your destination.
Oh, stop saying that.
She's only saying it because it's true. We are in the middle of London.
We are in the middle of a forest.
Come on, team, let's do this.
We will, if you stop calling us a team.
Theta's thought. Sadly for me, this whole story had me just going, what? It never grabbed me from start to finish, which is a shame really for something that had seemed so original in the trailer last week. There's a number of reasons for this, first among them being the Doctor's reference to his being the last of his kind. Now I don't think I missed the explanation to this, so off the back of the 50th anniversary story where the Doctor saves Gallifrey and therefore knows that he isn't the last of his kind, and indeed the implied intention of the Doctor to try and find Gallifrey, I'm struggling with him saying that he's the last of his kind. Later in the show the Doctor says explicitly that the Earth is his planet. He walks on it, he breathes its air. This is more than a little turnaround and a little bit of growing up since Kill the Moon, where he denies any interest in the Earth and leaves the humans to make the decision. What's changed? Nothing as far as I can see, and once again there's no ready explanation for this sudden change of hearts. Clara too seems to be acting out of character. When the TARDIS is found and the children clear away the foliage, it's Clara who says that the Doctor is to go and not take the children with him to a place of safety. Why does she say this? Because she's concerned that the children would miss their parents? This to me flies in the face of her previously proclaimed duty of care to the children. Surely within that duty of care the TARDIS is the best and safest option for everyone concerned. As for the children themselves, who've already been inside the TARDIS by this time, they wouldn't miss their parents that much as they're all fascinated by the TARDIS and clearly would relish the chance of a trip in it, and even more so surely if it would return them to safety and to their parents. No, sadly for me this whole story lacked bite. It lacked any excitement and it lacked any edge. There was no peril, no monster of the week, and as a result no real story. Danny Pink was just annoying, and the Doctor and Clara were both way off character. Forest of the Night was for me by far the worst story of this season, and at best I could only offer it a 5 out of 10. Unless there's any real direct tie-in with the season finale, I can't say I'll be watching it again.
Come here, you scrumptious little beauty.
A box?
Doctor, what is it?
I've got mail.
So as you can tell, I wasn't all that keen on this story. But what did you think? This week's feedback comes first from Jeff Waddell, who said, "By far the weakest of this season for me. No threat, no tension, poor characterisation. Not rubbish, but average at best." Next up was Scott Adam Julian. He said, "Enjoyed it. However, I feel it's becoming all about how children can save the world just by thinking and doing a bit of homework on the TARDIS. I thought this series was supposed to be dark. This story didn't manage to keep my attention like the previous 2 episodes did." And last up for this week was Andrew Marmot. He said, "A pleasant enough, lightweight episode. Not every episode has to have the power and weight of Kill the Moon or the fear factor of Flatline. Both Peter Capaldi and Jenna Coleman give strong performances, despite arguably having much less to work with from the script. The story just bumbled along as I suppose you'd expect it to when the conclusion was that the Doctor could do nothing to help. There were certainly some signs and portents layered here regarding Danny's first instinct to protect the children and Clara's to call the Doctor, and also the discovery of Clara's lie regarding not seeing the Doctor anymore. Overall, I found it a pleasant enough and maybe giving us a bit of fluff before we dive into the conclusion of this fantastic season. On a totally separate note, if Clara is to leave the TARDIS soon, assuming that ends the Doctor's link with Coal Hill School again, it would be nice to see the Chairman of the Board of Governors one more time before we move on. What do I mean? Have a look at the school sign at the beginning of Day of the Doctor. Thank you all for your thoughts and your feedback, as is often the case, a diverse bunch of views. But that's what makes life interesting.
Oh, goodbye, my dear chap. I must say I've had the time of my lives.
And that's all for this week. Thanks for listening as always, and if you have any feedback, don't forget you can contact the show at respectthething@hotmail.com, or comment on Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast on Facebook. Speaking of feedback, I was taking a look at the stats for the podcast recently and discovered that at least 50% of listeners to this show are listening through iTunes. If you like what you're hearing, I'd love it if you could leave me a review on iTunes and let others know what they're missing. Next week we'll be looking at the second of our characters from the early days of Doctor Who, Sarah Kingdom, as played by Jean Marsh. And of course I'll be reviewing Dark Water, and looking forward to your own thoughts on the first part of Season 8's 2-part finale.
Clara?
Do I have your attention? You will never step inside your TARDIS again.
Clara, what are you doing?
Time can be rewritten.
Clara, my Clara, I don't think you will!
You know who I am. I'm not Clara Oswald. Clara Oswald has never existed.
Thank you for listening to Theta Sigma's Doctor Who podcast. Doctor Who and its associated shows are all copyright and property of the BBC, and no infringement is intended.